Timmy.
What's up?
Welcome back. Welcome
up,
back,
buddy?
my friend. I think we're going to have to make you a permanent fixture on the show.
How permanent? Permanent like getting a banner, or permanent like
Oh, you don't get a banner.
we'll give you tickets for life until we decide we don't like it.
You need to earn your banners here, Timmy. You need to earn your banners here. That bubble banner that you're hanging needs to come down.
Let's again, like, it's as valid as any other title. You could take your pick on injuries or other mitigating factors.
I don't want to sound like a broken record, but everyone knows it wasn't a real title.
Is
anyway,
it was the 18th?
Let's move on. So today we've got quite a bit to talk about. Let's talk about some rookies, some up-and-coming young guns. Last year there was really only two really notable rookies, with Ja and Zion. But this year, man, the rookies have come out to play. There's five really solid ones, and then there's probably another three or four like cornerstone pieces, future cornerstone pieces. You know, I'm thinking about your Halliburtons and your Cole Anthonys. But yeah, when I say this year, I'm meaning last year. I'm meaning this year's rookies.
Sure.
Last year's rookies, there was a lot, and the two Ja and Zion was the year before. So I'm talking about this year's rookies, your Cade Cunninghams and your bloody Duartes and your Mobleys. So the MVP, the rookie of the year race this year is kind of been a one man show for the most part. Although there are some people making some late pushes. So one team that's really, really exciting, up and coming, is the Cleveland Cavaliers. I'm not sure if you've seen any of their recent games.
Well, I mean, if I'm not mistaken, Mobley's kind of been in that position where he's been the guy for the majority of the way. But when you feel that heat when people are chasing, like, I don't think it's something that he'd necessarily feel himself. But anytime you're feeling that kind of heat when the pack's chasing you down, it really will test what your character is, I guess.
Yeah, and Cleveland themselves, like they had zero expectations, man. But they are doing so good. They're pretty much going to make the playoffs this year. Darius Garland has just been insane. He's a really, really good player. I think he put up 41 yesterday or the day before. He's just going bonkers. So you pair him with Mobley, who's one of the bigger, better defenders out there at the moment. Yeah, they've got a heck of a squad there, Cleveland squad. So anyway, Mobley's sitting at about 15, 8, and 3. And hot on his heels is Boy Barnes from Toronto. I think he's 14, 7, and 3, so fairly close. And then probably my favorite rookie of this class. He's got the luscious locks. He's just from over the ditch. Mr. Josh Giddey. Now, I am going to admit, I was a Josh Giddey hater to start.
Was it because he was Australian?
No, not at all. I've got love for the Aussies. Not all of them, but I got love for the Aussies. Patty Mills. Oh, how can you hate that guy?
Patty's had a really good year.
Yeah, Patty. I've always liked Patty. He's just like, reminds me of a little Jack Russell. Just full of life, full of energy. Just won't back down. Just got that absolute dog in him. And
he's a character player. Like, you can see, to go into the mess that Brooklyn's been at times and just produce.
Yeah,
it hasn't been an issue for him.
Yeah. Him and Steph, man, they were such good pickups for that Brooklyn squad. Such good. I mean, they already had snipers. Well, I'm not sure you can call Joe Harris a sniper.
Well, it'll be
based on last year's playoffs.
Well,
but
not just that, it'll be hard with Harris. I mean, Harris looking like he might not be back for the playoffs.
Yeah. But just picking up those two was so key. But anyway, back to the rookies. Mr. Giddey. I was a Giddey hater, not because of any particular reason. Probably just because I was jealous that a guy like, he didn't look like a basketball player. He looked like he plays squash. He's got the long locks. He kind of a guy that you'd expect to see in a school production. Not tearing it up on the basketball court. So Josh Giddey, I'm sorry, man. I'm sorry I ever doubted you. You are a legend. You're a beast, and you've got a fan here, mate. I love watching you play. His court vision is out of this world. He reminds me a lot of. And look, anyone bigger than 6'5", that's a point guard I compare to Magic. So, but Josh Giddey, he's got the court vision. He's a good player. You know, both of his parents are professional. They could play. So there's definitely some generational stuff going on here in the NBA.
Yeah, there's always something to the character and the poise, I guess, that sometimes multi-generational players can come in with, because they will somewhat have a leg up in that respect. They've seen the life.
And that's the thing. I was talking to this guy once who, as you know, I used to play basketball, not particularly amazingly, but I was okay. And I met a guy on a plane once when I was doing my traveling, and he was not quite a Div 1 player, but he was fairly close to it, he was telling me.
So collegiate, clearly.
Yeah, but not a big school, not a big college. Like he didn't tell me exactly, and at the time I didn't quite understand. But he wasn't a top tier player, but he was there, and he was about 6'8", fit as all heck. And he was telling me about the levels that there are in basketball in general, and then the NBA. And it's something that I think I still don't completely understand because I'm not in the NBA, but I definitely understand like the fact that there is just levels to this, and a lot of NBA players say it. And what I'm getting at is, I was talking to this guy, and he would have ran circles around me. I know I could, and I could tell by looking at him. There was me, and then there was him. You know, I could go to your local YMCA and I can do okay, and I can put up some numbers and stuff, but anything more competitive than that, then I'll probably slip down. So anyway, he was saying how there's levels, and he was saying that he dominated his high school. He was putting up 30, 10, and then when he started playing the next level up, you know, he slipped down to like 15. And then he said, you know, I started trialing for these like not Div 1 teams, but like, you know, these decent colleges, and he was like, I wasn't even getting playing time. And he's just explaining to me the difference between us regular hoopers and then those at the NBA level. And he said, those at the NBA level, like it's almost like they speak another language. They're that good.
It's a complete another planet.
It's another planet. And then and my point is, when you think about Giddey and the fact that he comes from a basketball family, two basketball-minded parents, like you really have to be you have to be around such high level or elite players as a baseline. You know, you can't just play, and which is why I think we don't really ever do so well on a basketball stage as a country, because basketball here just really isn't prevalent, unless you're a 7-foot Steve Adams. You know, if you look at all our NBA players, Sean Marks, Steve Adams, how big are they? I think Sean Marks was 6'10". Like,
yeah, they're all
they're big
you're
boys.
looking at 4s and 5s.
So what I'm trying to say, and I think Webster might have had a stint somewhere as a smaller player, but for the most part, we don't get
Kirk Penny.
True, but again,
like bordering, like some league, like tryouts.
Yeah, that's what I mean. Not an NBA starter or not an NBA regular rotation kind of guy, right? So what I'm getting at is, quite often we don't make the NBA from this country on our skill. It's our size, it's our body. So what I'm getting at is this Giddey thing is like, he is so good that we don't even know how good he is. You know, we go, oh, that's a good player, oh, that's a good guy, but he is so good that we don't know how good he is, and have the court vision, have the court stuff is just insane. So what I'm getting is, Giddey, you got a fan here, mate. You're Australian. I won't hold that against you. Number 5, number 1 pick, Mr. Cunningham. He was an interesting case. Started slow, making a late push for Rookie of the Year this year as well. Now. Oh no, sorry, that's number 4, and then number 5 is Mr. Wagner from Orlando. And Orlando, they're shaping up to be quite nice with their Cole Anthonys and their Franz Wagners. I don't have that same excitement around Wagner that I do the 4 before him. But while I was looking into the rookies, I come across an unbelievable stat.
Okay. No, those stats hit me with it.
Can you guess what Wilt Chamberlain's stats were? Rookie year stats, first year in the league.
Rookie year.
Have a wild guess at what is. Just tell me his PPG and his rebounds.
I'm pretty sure his second year was the 55. No, so the 50, like the massive unbreakable all-time record of points, was his second year, which was 61-62.
So tell me have a guess at what you think as a rookie. So we're talking first year in the league.
First year Wilt, straight out of Kansas.
First year Wilt, yes. So obviously 55's out of this world, but what do you think he did in his rookie year, points and rebounds? Average.
22, 23 maybe, and points obviously, and then maybe 10 or 11 rebounds.
All right.
Something like good.
Pretty. That's amazing.
For a rookie, yeah, absolutely.
So that's amazing for a rookie. Wilt Chamberlain averaged 37 points and 27 rebounds as a rookie. That is just
that's
unfathomable, man. 37 and 27. I mean, if a player does that today...
Yeah, there's a degree of pace factor to those 60s teams, but that's just
astounding. Is just astounding. And he does not get the love he needs on the all-time
It's why
lists.
almost all statistical categories are since the merger or since Wilt Chamberlain. Like, there's always some sort of disclaimer that, it's not better than Wilt, but it's good.
Yeah, but for some reason, Wilt just gets almost thrown to the side when we talk about all-time greats or his records. It's almost like people think of them like they weren't achieved in the right way, or they somehow think there was some element of cheating or data skewing. Because, I mean, I know there's haters about his 100-point game. I see all the time people saying 100-point game is fake, this and that. Sure, his team fed him the ball like crazy in the fourth quarter. When they after halftime, they realized 100s on the table. They fed him the ball every possession, so that's not your typical game, but he still did it.
You still have to go out there and execute
Still got to go out there.
It's not like if someone decided...
Hey, and his defending team wasn't just letting it happen.
And like Book, it's not a knock to Book, but look at Book was putting up in a game where the win was probably out of reach.
Yes.
And he was taking out shots and he had the advantage of the three-pointer, and he didn't push that. He did not push 100.
Yes, not even close. And he was on fire, even Kobe's 81. Like,
even with the 81...
You watched that 81 and
he needed to score it, but like... You don't get the feeling he would have scored a ton more.
Exactly. You don't watch that 81-point game and think, he could have capitalized more here. It's like,
the Dallas game. The Dallas game, maybe he could have got, I think, to 80, 90 the same season. Because the thing Lakers fans always harp on about the potential matchup with Dallas if they get past Phoenix in the playoffs that year was, well, Kobe destroyed Dallas that year. He had 62 and three quarters, which always gets brought up because he outscored them. But I mean, it's absolutely unfathomable, a lot of the stuff Wilt's done. And I mean, shout out to the YouTube channel Wilt Chamberlain Archive. They've got tons of footage of him, so you can see him do his thing and see he was legit. See the size of the guys he was going up against, like a young Kareem, Bill.
That's right.
A lot of the guys in the 60s and early 70s, like Wilt was legit. And the fact that you hear the stories like the one from Larry Brown about him playing pickup against Magic in the 80s and Magic calling a goaltend and then saying there's going to be no more baskets in this gym and just completely closing Magic and his bros out. Like the fact that he could do that at that age, again, you think about what a young Wilt would do in any era, and it's just, again, arguably the most unique player in history.
Where do you have him on your all-time list? Just out of curiosity.
It's not like I'm not totally locked into the idea. So, I mean, we've had this discussion off camera, but it's like, I think there's tiers to it. So, like in the top tier, you kind of have to have the givens. People will say in this day and age are Jordan and LeBron. And I'm not locked into the idea of where they are in that order. I think Kareem absolutely belongs in that discussion because of his success, his ability to just win throughout his entire basketball career. I think Wilt... This is tough to say, especially as a guy, because Wilt did play for the Lakers and not the guy, but I find it hard to place him above Bill because ultimately it is a game about success. Like, if you're...
Do you have him in your top 10?
Wilt Chamberlain. Oh, absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely.
Okay. So
he's right
10.
On the fringe. He's right on the fringe.
We'll get through our top 10 list in a little while.
The top tier is kind of, to cut into that, the top tier, I feel like it's those three and Bill.
And then...
Potentially, it could be quite fluid because there's not a huge difference between those guys and then like a guy like Magic who won 5 titles. You see the impact he made on the court, how he made other players better. Yep. You get into what Larry's done, and you can go on and on and on. There's plenty of players who can make the argument to be in those kinds of tiers, but Wilt is at the absolute, the only people who really have arguments over him are Bill because of his relative success, and they played in the same era. And then obviously Jordan, LeBron, Kareem, because there was a little bit of crossover with Kareem and Wilt, but not a huge amount. And then obviously Jordan and LeBron, it's a completely different game by the time they're playing versus Wilt's era.
True. So we'll get back to our top 10 list later in this because it's something I definitely want to dive into. But if we talk about the league currently, so last time we mentioned, the Lakers. We don't have to go there again, but I want to talk about my boys for a minute, the Celtics. There was a period there where I was on the receiving end of some of your nice comments towards the Celtics, and they were valid.
Yeah,
Our
my
Celtics weren't playing well, but they have really turned it on, and they have become one of the best, if not the best, defensive team in the NBA at the moment. They still need to put it together for long stretches, but man, they're looking good. And something that I want to bring up with you is Tatum. What are your thoughts on Tatum, Kobe 2.0?
It's not a one-to-one comparison, but I see why people would bring it up, because he's clearly acknowledged the fact that he's inspired by him and he looked up to him as a developing basketball player. You can see parts of Kobe's game, and I know there were people, Boston fans included, media fans included, who at times have picked at him for maybe, like, he's shown that he can be a great scorer but a great distributor as well, and kind of picking on him for having those little Kobe-like aspects, which a lot of Kobe's game people don't tend to take well, like don't take those mid-range shots, don't ISO out for this, like, not playing that way, but in bits and pieces. The thing is, this is like a credit to Tatum, but also admittedly me giving Kobe his flowers without making about him not being here anymore. But how resilient that type of scoring is if you're really good at it. You can force 3-point shots, which is obviously a lot more difficult considering the range and the coverage you can get. You can wall off the paint, but it's really hard to effectively deter a good mid-range scorer, as you see with the success with DeMar, for example. So him being what he is, like, it's good that he's gone through that, because in the long run, as he builds that foundation, like when you get into those games, like KD, if you need a bucket, like, again, Steph will always do his thing, for example, but having a resilient form of scoring you can go to, being the guy, and a lot of it, the other thing to come to with him as well is how much I almost vomit giving Boston credit, but like them sticking to their guns despite all the critique they were getting from fans, from media early in the season, and all people, it seems like there was a very big narrative trying to drive a wedge between him and Jalen, and they've kind of persevered through that.
And smart, they really did their best.
And I don't think that's necessarily a Boston thing in general. I think that's just when the storylines the media will circulate on them. We've seen it in LA in the past, like literally the season before we won the title, and then since as well. So I think people just want to drive clicks, but seeing them kind of tough it out, work together as a unit, that's impressive.
What do you think Celtics' ceiling is this year? Where do they end up in the playoffs? I know you mentioned you've given us your playoff prediction, but
I'd put them a tier below. Like, my concept is you can sometimes get what are called contenders, and like what people say when they mean contenders usually is a team that will do really well in terms of the regular season and then go into the playoffs and maybe get past the first round. I feel like in terms of actually winning the title or emerging out of the East, I wouldn't put them in the same tier as Philly or Brooklyn or I can't see them beating Milwaukee. I'll put it that way.
That is so
I can't see them beating Milwaukee or those other two teams.
If a team has a number one offense in the league, they often are one of the favourites to win the title. But if a team has number one defense in the league, we don't put that much stock into it.
Yes and no, because if you go back 2 years, that Lakers defense was pretty much the best defense in the league.
But what was their offense as well?
Their offense was really good.
Exactly. So what I'm saying is, you can be a good offensive team and a poor defensive team, and still rank quite high. But if you're a great defensive team and a mid-offensive team, for some reason we don't give them their dues, which is what I do. So I think the Celtics actually, let's go back a step. And this hurts me to say, I haven't believed in a Celtics team the way that I have that 08 team since 08. There hasn't been one Celtic team so far that I thought going into the series are the favourites to win.
So you're admitting in 2010 you guys weren't the favourites?
In 2010, I think that was closer than it's ever been, but I couldn't hand on my heart say it was going to be this. It was closer, don't get me wrong,
it went 7 games.
It was closer, but we're not going to go down why that went to 7 games and the tiny little reasons why that happened. But what I'm saying is, 08, I felt damn confident we were going to win that ship. And the years that followed, I didn't have that same feeling, and I haven't had that feeling for any Celtics team, even when we got Kyrie. And ultimately, it comes back to whether or not I think Tatum's that guy. And you know this already, and which is surprising coming from me as a Celtic fan. I don't know if I'm all in on Tatum yet.
Which is surprising to me because, like, if he was on our team, he would have been the exception to, even if LeBron had showed up, if there'd been a trade involving him, it would have been persona non grata for me as a Laker fan. Like, if you've got a guy that's that, he's shown as, like, again, you've seen his, not so much his performance, like, he's been good this year, but, like, I think his performance over the last couple of years, but especially going into, towards the playoffs last year, like, you see that peak form come out of him. It's about consistency. Like, again,
and I think that's
what
my
makes
main
a true
issue
superstar.
with Tatum is that whenever KD's got the ball, and I know KD's about to shoot it or whatever, I can almost breathe a sigh of relief before the ball's shot because I know it's going in, and I can do that for KD. To some extent, you do that if Bron's got the ball, you know there's a good chance it's going in. Curry, you know there's a good chance it's going to, so there's a few teams and a few guys you can watch and go, and you can almost relax a bit and go.
If you're a fan of them. If you're not,
well, not even not though, even not. Like, there's times
if you're watching
when Bron's had the ball and I've just said.
So you're watching the finals in 2018, Bron's got the ball, you're not a little bit like, oh no.
No, that's the thing. I'm not thinking he's going to miss. I'm thinking there's a good chance this is going in, and you can do that with a few really elite players. For KD, I'd put my life on the line and say he's about to hit this mid-range jumper, but that's how much I think. Yeah, this guy's so good. With Tatum, it's like he should be that good. It's like I should believe him, but for some reason, I just don't believe in his ability to score the basketball as much. And then he'll go out and put a 50-point game up, and it's amazing. But then I watch it, and I'm like, yeah, okay. These, he'll put together a handful of buckets that look so easy. They look Kobe-like, that, turnaround jumper in your face, and they look beautiful. And then he'll miss a wide-open three and you're just like, and it just, for some reason, Tatum to me, I don't know if he's that guy. And I'm hoping that I'm wrong. And the other thing is, defensively, I feel he should be better. He's athletic, he's long. The thing that I think he lacks is, you can idolize Kobe, and what did Jordan say? You can wear the shoes, but you can't fill them. I almost feel a little bit like that with Tatum. It's like, yeah, you might idolize Mamba mentality, but do you have it? Do you have that dog in you? And that's what I think holds me back from really, really going all in on Tatum. Is I don't know if he's got that animal dog like defense. Because with Kobe, he'd score in your face, and then he would be in your face on defense, and he was relentless, whereas I don't really feel that relenting energy from Tatum. I don't know if he has it. So it's hard for me as a Celtics fan to say that. And then I look at what the options are. Okay, what do you do? Because it's my belief, Celtics will never win without a good big man. We've never won a chip without a good big man, and I don't think we'll ever win without a good big man being the best or second best player on your team. That's what I believe. So just for clarity, would you say KG was the first or the second best player in 08? Because it's often... That's interesting. This comes back
Boston. I feel like Boston people always say KG.
Well, this comes back to our argument around MVP, right? And then, because we could break that down further, is, well, what do you mean by most valuable? Because Pierce wasn't amazing on defense, but KG was. Pierce scored more than KG, but who had the most impact on that team? So and of course, Pierce got the Finals MVP. To answer your question, who was the most important?
Who's the most important player to that team?
Most important player to that team. That's really tricky to answer. I could argue Kevin Garnett simply because Pierce couldn't get it done without him. But then I could also argue it's Pierce because Pierce was essentially the scoring leader of that team. And Pierce hit some big shots. So it's a tricky one to answer, but I would have to say, in my opinion, Garnett for the leadership and the defensive presence and the rebound. I think Garnett brought that team together.
And the attitude as well.
And the energy.
He had a pronounced mean streak, which I think Pierce had elements of, but I think KG's influence gave him more confidence to have a swagger about him.
KG was a Celtic before he was a Celtic. Boston Celtics, gritty, tough defense. And poor Pierce almost seemed to me like he, You know what? Paul Pierce, I think, would have made a better Laker than he would have.
He
would have made a better Laker than the
Celtic. He grew
Celtic.
up watching games at the Forum, so let's not.
He's got that attitude of, I'm just going to dance and score on you and talk some trash, not play a lot of defense. Although not all Lakers did that.
I wouldn't say he didn't play defense, but it wasn't his best attribute.
It was just slow. You know how you can see some players like Lucas. They're incredible players, but they're not defensive athletes like your Thybulls and your Go Bears. So, good question, but I'm going to have to go with Garnett on that one. With Garnett, but yeah, back to the Celtics. Something about it. I just can't buy into it as a Celtics fan, and
the reason I lead into that.
Yep.
To continue this comparison, if he's, I think, more your Kobe or your Pierce figure, who does Jaylen Brown have it in him to be that KG-like figure? Because I see a lot more. I see more, personally, outside looking in, admittedly, I see more dog in Jaylen than I do in Tatum.
To be honest, man, I think they're both. I think they're both nice guys. I think they can both ball, but I think they both are missing that big presence, which Marcus Smart is trying to be. But I think Marcus Smart is trying to be that next KG in terms of I'm the leader, I'm the vet, I'm a bit of an a-hole. Listen to me. I just don't know if it works that well with that team. I want to be wrong. Believe me, I want to be wrong because that Celtics team's got 2 All-Stars in Jaylen and Tatum and an insane defensive vet and Smart, but we aren't good without a big being our best player or second best player.
Horford's not your guy?
No, Horford's not our guy. He had a shot. He missed it. He bounced around. No, Horford's not our guy. So we need a Embiid-like player. We need a Giannis-like player at the center.
They don't grow on trees.
Yeah, well.
I mean, look, you could sell your whole team for one and get 2 years of play out of them.
Well, that's what I think, man. That's what I think. I think keep Tatum and put everyone else on the block and see what you get big man wise. And don't cheap out for these bloody Sabonis's and these Nurkic's. Nah, get us a big, solid center.
So who's a realistic get for that team?
Not a lot. Not a lot. So I'm just dreaming here, but I'm just making the point that our Celtics, until we get a solid big, we're not in contention.
Be bridesmaids.
We're not in contention. Golden State started the year incredibly well. Curry
looks scary.
Curry was an early MVP favorite. He had an amazing stretch, and then he put together a stretch of like 12 games where he shot 20% or 20-something%. And for a period there, Golden State, there was talk of Curry being the MVP and talk of them winning the championship again this year. Now, a lot happened in between. Iggy, Dre went down. Curry had a shooting slump, and Clay came back. And now we have present-day Golden State, which is...
a zombification almost.
It's actually quite interesting. You've got Curry, who is being inconsistent, to say the least. Wiseman is coming back. We don't know what he's going to look like. We've got Draymond, who's out. We've got Clay, who's still figuring out how to integrate. And
it's rough coming off an injury like that as well.
It is.
The perspective is always, because he's been gone for so long, people are like, he's going to come back and he's going to be Clay. It's like, it takes a while to come back after something like that.
Yeah.
Like, you only need to see how long. KD's pretty much the only person in history you could think of that had an injury like that, where they've just come back and...
there's Dominique had an injury similar, and there was another player.
He came back and was good after it, but you wouldn't say he was straight back to being Dominique.
No, not at all. Not at all. And that's the interesting thing about this Golden State team is they've got the firepower. You cannot count them out. You can't count this Golden State team out. Now, Steve Kerr's actually come out and said, we desperately need Draymond, and they do. They desperately do need Draymond Green. He's massively, criminally underrated as a player.
It's really interesting. One thing I was picking up, I was watching him talk with JJ Redick not too long ago, and he was just talking about the Clippers series, the Donald Sterling series.
Oh, yes.
And how he was a young rook at the time. But you see the difference in attitude between like that, like his confidence, his leadership, his attitude, but kind of not the exact same vibe, but similar to what we we're talking about with Kevin earlier, Kevin Garnett obviously, is something that rubs on the rest of the team. It helps Curry be really good. and it gives him confidence that he's got like his bag man with him, basically. And it's not a knock to Draymond. What I'm saying is he's willing to get his hands dirty. He'll do whatever it takes to win. Yeah, and he's got a winning attitude.
Yeah, Draymond's like that guy that he's like a janitor, you know, like. And I mean this in the most respectful, nicest way.
No slander, Draymond.
No slander whatsoever. But he's like that guy that without you, your whole building goes to shit. He comes in, he cleans everything, he puts everything back where it needs to be. He keeps the whole place in check, and that's what Draymond is, I think, to the Warriors. Yeah, he's not going to lead you in scoring. Yeah, he's not going to lead you, or he might lead you in assists. But yeah, you know, he's not going to be the face of the franchise, but he is that glue that holds everyone together, and he cleans up everyone else's crap. Curry misses. He's there for a rebound, or he's setting those off ball screens. He's that guy that everyone says, hey, Curry's amazing off the ball. Yeah, but you watch how Dre sets him up.
Yeah, and like he'll make sure everything's ticking on offense. He makes the reads defensively. Like there's no doubt he's the leader of the squad on that end.
That's right. And I did see something recently about Dre saying he would have been the Finals MVP hadn't he been suspended.
I think there's a legitimate case that he was Golden State's best player in that series.
It's hard to say, man, because, and this is where having an MVP award or Finals MVP award that isn't clear cut with definitive
the criteria. It's how you end up with Iguodala winning. No,
exactly.
No offense to Iggy,
but without Curry, they lose. They don't even. They're not even there. So it's so difficult to do that. But yeah, I understand what Draymond is trying to say. Because he is the unsung hero of the team. He really is. And finally, people are seeing it now when they've got Clay and Steph back and no Dre. What's happening? They're falling apart.
The formula's not there.
That's right. I mean, I am interested to see what happens when Wiseman comes back. I mean, because that's a 7-footer with some open. That's
is always the thing.
7-footer, man.
Like, this is tangenting a bit into the fantasy, but like, I always felt like the 2020 Lakers team would have matched up well against the Warriors in general because of the factor of a guy like, especially the way AD played in those playoffs. The Warriors not having a factor like that. Like Draymond's great defensively, but it's not the same as having a guy with size. So if you can add size to their formula, like yes, they don't have KD anymore, and Steph's a little bit older. Clay's got a bit more mileage on coming back from the injury, and they don't have Kevin anymore. But again, the way that they get things done, unselfish team, all about, again, moving the ball, which is, again, commonalities in all-time great teams and championship teams.
100%. So, it's going to be interesting to see how they finish up the year. I think, is it out of line to call them a dark horse right now? I think
the thing that's it's such a swirl because with like people expected like, oh, they may well be a contender, but no one was sure how things were going to play out in terms of the slightly new dynamic with all these newer players since they've started contending and Clay coming back. They didn't know how it was going to play out. I think the way they're playing now is below what they are, but I think the way they're playing earlier might have been slightly above what they are. Like,
I think I don't think
they're not quite the 2016 or 2017 level, but
I mean, it's just I think the key factors are: does Clay come back to normal?
Does he acclimate? Yeah.
Does he come back to normal? And how do those guys that we're filling in change? How do they adjust their games for less minutes? Because ultimately, the only thing that's going to get you better as a player is more minutes on that court. And it's an interesting approach when Kerr said he's starting straight away. When Clay comes back, it was an interesting approach because as a young up and comer, I'd feel a little bit cheated out there, to be honest. But you've got to respect Clay and his body of work. Moving on, we touched on it earlier, but let's get into the age-old debate of NBA all-time lists. Now, 1 and 2, we don't really have to go into too much. We could argue. Well, I mean, I thought you and I were. Let's talk about it. It seems like you might have changed your position since we last spoke. Number 1 through 10, and it doesn't have to be in order. But who are your top 10 NBA players of all time?
I think the people who are almost undeniably on there, like Bill
Russell. Agree.
Russell has to be there.
Agree.
Wilt has to be there.
Agree.
Kareem has to be there.
Agree.
I think Magic has to be there.
Agree.
Larry is probably in there somewhere, but that's the first one where I almost had like inkling. Where
Probably.
I mean, because the thing is, it gets harder with guys like Bron coming along.
Probably.
And we'll come back to this. This isn't the thing is. So ultimately, it's about to a degree defining a generation, right? So like, Wilt and Russ are probably the exception because they were two titans at the same time. But like Kareem defined his generation as good as Dr. J was. Magic pre-Jordan, he did kind of define that generation. Ultimately, 5 titles.
You can't say Magic without Bird, though.
I don't think you can, but ultimately,
Magic without Bird.
This will be going into it a bit, but like, as good as Larry was, and he did win the consecutive MVPs, and I know
how many?
But
how many in a row?
But
you just can't overlook that.
It's the body of work, right?
Yeah.
Like for whatever reason,
how many championships do you want?
Admittedly, self-inflicted.
How many championships do you want?
He didn't have the career that Magic had, and Magic's career still ended earlier than it could have, with the way things played out.
Larry wasn't drafted to a team with Kareem Abdul-Jabbar.
He didn't have scrubs on his team. Let's make that clear.
He definitely didn't have Kareem Abdul-Jabbar.
So Robert Parrish
is not Kareem Abdul-Jabbar. He's not on anybody's top 10 list.
Let's go back to the modern Lakers. Just because you've got AD and Bron doesn't mean you're going to win a title, unfortunately.
No. But let's just go back to who was a rookie on the Lakers 2020.
Who's the rookie?
Pick anyone.
A rookie from 2020. Ooh, THT.
Champion. Why? Because he was drafted to the Lakers. So don't give me that argument around he didn't put the body of work. He wasn't drafted to a team that had Kareem Abdul-Jabbar. That's why.
But ultimately, the thing is, Magic Johnson has the distinction of being the only person in history who can say
as a rookie,
they were the Finals MVP
as a rookie.
I
get that. That's probably the only separating factor between those two. However, to say that Larry's probably in top 10 and isn't is blasphemy.
The thing is, I'll go for the people I feel like are guaranteed first. So, like we've covered. Okay, so just to recap, we've got Bill. We've got Wilt. We've got Kareem. We've got Magic. Let's give half the mark because you're kind of forcing it to Larry. That's already 5 out of 10.
No. So you've got Jordan, you've got Bron.
You've got, right, yeah, so I was coming to that. You've got Jordan, you've got Bron.
Yep, you got 4 left.
No, in your example, you've got 3 left if you're counting
this isn't
Larry.
my list, this is yours. I'm just telling you how wrong you are.
Okay. I have to, because I think the body of work and considering what he did.
Are you about to say Kobe or Shaq?
No. So if it's an all-time list, I think it has to be based on the body of work, which is going back to what I brought up with Magic versus Bird.
Yep.
And it'll sound sacrilegious to a section of fans, but like Kobe made a bigger impact than Shaq did over his total career.
Wow. So
if you're taking them, if you're bottling a version of a player,
look, I don't
like
disagree with you.
A single version of a player, like in one moment, then the year 2000 Shaq, you'd take over arguably anyone in history. Because you average almost 40 and 20 in the finals.
Well, you might.
Name a more dominant player than the year 2000 Shaq.
A more dominant, I'd say Wilt Chamberlain.
But could Wilt do it on the back of team success, though?
Wilt Chamberlain.
The counter example to this, and again, this is Laker slandering different Laker teams against one another, but look at the 1969 finals. Wilt had every ingredient he had to cement his place, square up the ledger with Bill. Like, he'd beaten Bill, don't get me wrong. But he had the opportunity for the last note of Bill Russell's career been, Wilt beat him once they had a team of equals. They had the better team in 1969 and they did not get the job done.
Yeah, but you that's not what you're asking. You're asking who was the most dominant player. Who could get the most points.
If I need someone to make a difference in a final series, basically, is what I would take.
Yes, there's so many factors there, dude.
What I'm saying is, if I could bottle a player, if I needed someone to win a series.
Yeah. I mean, okay, so let's carry on with your list. You've got 3 left. So you put Kobe in there?
Kobe over Larry is tough because on resume, I think you could make the argument for Larry, but based on I think I take both of them if I'm honest. If I'm picking it based
Kobe
on my preference, I take Kobe and Larry.
Kobe and Larry, so leaving you 2 spots.
That leaves me 2. I think I take, for those last 2 spots, it's hard. I think you have to take Duncan.
Yes.
Because of his level of consistency and excellence. Like, that can't be left out.
Cannot be mad at a Duncan selection.
And this is where it gets a whole lot harder.
Yeah, often with these lists, it's not about who you put on, it's about who you leave off.
I would be inclined to exclude for now because there's still, like, Bronze, it's not a secret, it's near the end of his career. I don't think I'll count Curry or KD as being eligible, although I feel like they could thread in that eventually. More so KD in this case. Like, don't get me wrong, I think Curry's is more impact, but KD's just like, if you're picking someone, and I know we've had this discussion before off camera, if you're picking someone for a one-on-one game, like he's not, you don't have the same level of competitive confidence in. You wouldn't say like a Jordan, for example. But if I needed someone to pick someone for a one-on-one game, and you know this better than me because you pick him when we play 2K, Durant is almost complete in terms as complete as a basketball player as you could have in terms of a one-on-one environment.
Yep, agree. And I'll touch on that point a little bit. Who's your last pick?
Just because, so we've got two Titans of the 60s, we've got Kareem, who defined the 70s, we've got Magic and Larry, we've got Jordan, Shaq, Kobe, Bron.
You got one more.
And we've got Duncan.
It's Jen. Timmy Duncan. Okay. So, notable omissions.
Hit me. Hit me now with the counter argument.
Well, hang on.
I've caveated Durant and Steph just because they're not done yet. I feel like they're still.
Well, we'll go through mine and then we'll talk about our omissions.
Okay.
Right. And I will.
Are you going? Just do rough chronological because I feel like
I won't do actual chronological. But what I will do is I'll mention how your definition of greatest of all time and mine are vastly different. You look at the body of work. You look at the resume, which is. I understand that argument because to be the greatest of all time, you got to be a winner, right? Not one person on that list is ringless, and being ringless definitely affects people's legacies as they go through their careers, and it actually affects the players a heck of a lot. Hence why they ring chase as the older they get.
The thing in sports, right? It's like the ultimate measure across any sport is winning.
Yes. However, my opinion differs slightly on that. I look at greatest of all time very, very simply. I say, give me that player at their peak. What can that player do as an all-round basketball player? And I look at those two things and I think, okay, to me, to be a great basketball player, you have to be great at everything basketball. That's how I look at it. So I actually don't discount players who have never won titles, and I don't discount players who don't have the resume, so to speak. I look at someone's peak, and I look at what can that person do. So in saying that, there's a lot of players who make a lot of people's top 10s that don't even make my top 10. For me, Shaq is not in my top 10.
And I'm guessing that in my case, it'll be bordering on the omission for longevity, not longevity, but like, I feel the feeling with Shaq is, had he been a bit healthier or some of the stuff like certain things in the middle of his career, like he could have had more success than he did.
To me, Shaq is a very one-dimensional player.
That one dimension changes a lot though.
Yep. Shaq's a one-dimensional player. And I don't mean scoring versus defense because that's not what I mean. I mean Shaq only really has one toolkit that maybe expands to rebounding and defense. Work in the paint, and then some interior defense. But that's really all he's got in his little package.
The traditional big man.
He can't shoot free throws. He can't shoot threes. He's a bit slow.
You want your 7 foot 300 pound?
No, I want I want the greatest basketball players of all time to be able to do it all.
Right.
That's what I want because, if I'm a builder building a house and I can only build walls,
80% of the house.
That doesn't make me a great builder. I might be the best at building walls, but I can't build where's the frame, the floor, the roof. Like, that doesn't make me the greatest builder of all time. So when I look at basketball all-time lists, I don't agree with most of what people look at. Well, I just discount criteria for championships and resume straight away. So with that being said, this is my all-time top 10 greatest players of all time. Number 1 is Jordan. And again, this isn't chronological, but he's just Jordan, LeBron. 2 players who can score, who can defend, who can pass. Some better than others.
Almost complete as basketball.
Almost complete. Kobe Bryant. Kobe is...
Damn, you're giving more love than I am.
Yeah, well, I'm not saying he's 3, but he's in that top 10 because he can do so many things. He can do so many things. He can shoot, he can score, he can defend, he can pass, he can rebound. He can do everything you need a basketball player to do.
Arguably the most fundamentally sound player in history.
IQ, leadership, those are things I think great basketball players need. Okay, so that's my 3. Magic Johnson. Magic Johnson's in there. Shoot, pass, score, defense, leadership.
You've had comments about his defense in the past.
I have, but that's only compared to those other 3. He's still got good defense. It's just not the best defense. Larry Bird. He's in there too.
Absolutely complete bust. Literally, he was really athletic, but the perception of he wasn't athletic, and that was literally the only thing. If you gave him more athleticism, you could argue he would be the best player of all time.
Yeah, you could.
Legitimately.
You could. Or he'd be the next, he would be just like Bron. But his passing and his post-game is so underrated.
It's crazy to me that you could have someone as good as Magic was. There's not usually a lot of argument about Magic being the greatest passer playmaker ever, but you could have someone who's as close to as good as him playing at the same time in Larry.
Exactly. If Magic Johnson wasn't in the league, I'd say Larry Bird would have been considered probably one of the best passers in the NBA. He just happened
to play with the greatest passer of all time.
Exactly. Number 6, Wilt Chamberlain's in there. Now, obviously, as you get down this list, you just physically can't have 5 people that are great at everything. So I've already mentioned the 5 that are. So now you're kind of going away because you have to pick players that are great at something, but
it's
maybe
still the totality, but there's perhaps a compromise or two.
Exactly. So that's why we get into our Wilts, our Bill Russells. So Wilt Bill Russell is in there. Hakeem's in there. I don't have that much love for Hakeem. I think, and I have this belief, I think there comes periods in basketball championship history where you have your phony champions. And what I mean by that is you have champions who just the champion between dynasties. Because ultimately the NBA kind of is ruled by
a phony champion
dynasty.
Is a tough title for that,
well, it is, because it's someone who just really slips in the cracks while the real next legacy is either starting or ending. It's like you always have
Pistons.
Mavericks.
Sorry.
Yeah.
Sorry, Pistons fans. I'm a Lakers fan.
Mavericks, but you have a period of dominance from a good team and a good franchise, and then they taper off, and then between them dropping and the new dynasty taking over, there's this middle ground of who's taking the crown, and we're literally in one right now. But to be fair, we've been in one for an elongated period of time for this.
There's been a vacuum post.
Been a bit of a vacuum, but what I'm getting at is there's this kind of vacuum, and I give Hakeem no love because if Jordan didn't retire, he doesn't want a ring, and I firmly believe that. Because how can you lose? How can you not win? Or how can the Bulls go back to back to back? Jordan leave the
take
ring,
2 years off,
and then
almost
come back and do a three-peat again. If that is not evidence that you were an interim phony champion, then nothing else is.
The prosecuting evidence was presented by Jordan and his team himself in the last dance, which was that in '93 he was already thinking about retiring on the Dream Team camp.
Yep.
If he didn't want a three-peat and he wasn't thinking about that part of it, he may well have in '92. So I think the chances of him running through '94, '95 after being that exhausted and not feeling like he had the carrot to chase in essence, I don't see it. Doesn't happen.
It does.
It doesn't happen because outside of Bill, there's just no one who can sustain that level.
Who stops him? Who stops him?
I genuinely think the Rockets do, because admittedly they don't have an answer for Jordan, and pretty much no one did, other than Gary Payton, I'm sure, would argue himself.
Of course. Cue the video.
But Hakeem was just so unbelievable, especially the second year.
Okay, so why wasn't he so unbelievable when Jordan came back, and then the year after, and then the year after?
I think the problem. So it goes back to
the thing is, all credibility was lost when Jordan came back and three-peated. If they'd won another one, sure, but all credibility was lost. So
there's a difference.
Back to my list. I'm not gonna. I give Hakeem. But Hakeem's on my list. I put him on there,
and I'll note he was complete. Pretty much. If I was going to pick another one, it was pretty much down to him and one other person.
Because he is complete, he's on the list. I have Kevin Durant on my list.
Unsurprising.
I know people are going to hate at me for that, but again, I'm not looking at body of work because I don't think that matters for greatest basketball player of all time. It matters in some degree, but not as much as everyone think. And I put KD on there because he, again, complete. Name a weakness in his game. You could argue defense. The defense is okay.
It's
not bad.
It's not even okay. He's a very good defender.
He's long.
He's a very good defender. He's admittedly out of that list. There's still guys you'd pick above him, but
maybe you would, but no.
He's a shot blocking difference maker. His height, his skill set for his height is literally unmatched in history.
I think his skill set across the board.
I think the skills that he has that had they played in a modern era, guys like Jordan and Kobe could have mastered, but they weren't 7 foot. And the fact that you can have a guy who's that size with that skill set, it becomes virtually unstoppable. And the thing that it gets harped on about Durant, well, the thing that's scary about him is how consistent and how easy it is for him to pull the 30s he does. Like you'll see players in this season, for example, who have high scoring averages, and they have bursts here and there, and they have the games where they get 20 or even teens. Durant's just consistently a threat. It feels like he's not breaking a
What's
sweat
interesting lately is people's talk around why KD hasn't put up bigger number games. And it's actually really interesting because I think his biggest game might be 54 points. And someone who can score at will like KD should be able to put up 60. I don't think he's had one 60-point game ever. And there was some interesting comments floating around why that is. And if you think about the teammates, we think about who put up the bigger point games. You're looking at Kobe's 81, you're looking at Book's 70, whatever. And
he got a lot of slander for that game.
And then you've got a whole bunch of people who Bron's put up some 60-point games. But if you look at who KD has played with and the shots he's had to sacrifice, Russ, Kyrie, Steph, Clay, he's played with shooters his whole life. So he's had to give that ball up and high usage people, right? So I don't think KD's scoring, not being able to score 60 or more is because he's incapable. I just think it's because...
Oh, it's 100% not because he's incapable.
Because KD is...
I think it's demeanor to an extent as well. Like, it's not to say that's not saying he's not competitive, not hungry or anything like that. But, like, again, going back to Kobe, like, a lot of that attitude was an FU attitude to a situation, like, oh, I'm playing in the Garden, or, oh, this is this team and I've had this history with them, or they want me to, like, basically be subservient to Shaq, so I'm going to go out and put on the scoring streak to show that, like, this is my team as much as anyone else's.
Yep.
And I don't feel like KD's ever had that streak in him where he's felt the need to do that. A lot of the time he's been able to win games without having to go absolutely nuclear.
Yeah. Well, even KD himself has come out and said, I think it's more impressive to have 30 straight games with 30 points than 100%. Straight game. And I agree with him. Like, being able to go out and put 30 points up every night.
That's the thing. Being reliably, because, hey, it's easy, again, like Jamal Crawford. Like, you can do it. You can absolutely do it. But, like, to do the level he does consistently.
So that was my, so far it's LeBron, Kareem, Jordan, Magic, Larry, Wilt, Bill, Kobe, Hakeem, and the last person I'd have on my list is Tim Duncan. And that's not in any particular order. But if I look at it from a strictly, okay, if I had to give you a number out of 10 for each basketball quality, passing, shooting, or, rebounding, whatever, and then take that average number and get you a total at the end, those are my 10. And like I said, in most of these lists, it's not about who you put on, it's who you leave off. So my number one omission was Shaq.
I think mine was Hakeem.
And you left off Hakeem. And I can see the argument both ways. Like, I know Shaq's an insane player. He's probably 11 in my books, even though he is not that dynamic in terms of what he can do, he still makes up for it,
It's the gravity. So it's like another person, not so much that you wouldn't put in, like, they'll probably be on the border of it one day, but Steph.
Yeah.
Wouldn't take them as a complete
Shaq
basketball player
reminds
to
me
your
of
argument.
Steph in that argument.
100%. Because they're absolutely gravity bending in that, for Shaq, for example, how many guys he got paid to be a guy to throw 6 fouls at so you can slow down Shaq. And the rules being changed to slow him down.
And just being nuclear offensively, both of them.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, not just, but like the impact that created for the players around them as well. Because that's the thing with Steph. Like, him being as good as he is creates so many opportunities for other people. Like, that's why if you could find a way to get those two in a time machine on the same team, God help the planet. because you could just throw three decent 3-and-D guys that just have high basketball IQ, and then it's not that they grow on trees either, but you could put 3 of those guys around that, and that's easily a championship team.
Oh yeah. I think if we're going to entertain that thought, I think, to be honest, there's not one person you could pair up with Steph Curry that outside of point guards that will make a better pairing. You could Steph and Bron. I mean, we saw what Steph and KD did. Steph and Kareem, Steph and Shaq, Steph and MJ, Steph and Bird. Like Steph's probably going to be I think, in my opinion, when all is said and done, I think he ends up better than Shaq, only because Steph can do more things Shaq could do. So Steph can't defend, obviously, as well as Shaq could, but Steph could do more things, I think, than Shaq could do, and that's why I think he would end up higher than Shaq, in my opinion.
So here's an interesting counter fantasy argument that I just thought of based on that. Is Steph a better scorer, creator, than Shaq is an interior creator? Because Shaq, arguably more than anyone in history, you could argue, I think the Hakeem had a more nuanced, and same with Kareem. Shaq game, like they were more complete as post players.
Yeah, Hakeem could Shaq do more, so but Shaq was so good at one thing.
Shaq was so good at being able to not just bully people, but also his footwork and his touch with his hook around the hoop.
Yep. Is Steph a better scorer?
If you had to build a team around one of the two, let's put it that way.
Yes.
You can either draft a team of like roughly, let's say, 80, 85 average overall players, 4 that fit the other positions around Shaq, or 4 that fit around Steph.
It's hard, right? Because with Shaq, I get guaranteed.
You're going to get the other team in foul trouble.
Guaranteed high field goal efficiency, and I get guaranteed defensive anchor in the paint. And 7-foot bodies are way harder to come across than a 6'1" dude who can shoot.
And your scorers are going to get a lot of free throws.
But Steph Curry is probably the best off-ball offensive player we've ever seen. He's the best 3-point shooter we've ever seen. And that's the only thing that is making me think twice is Steph's threes being more than Shaq's twos. And who would I take? I would take Steph Curry first. Because in my mind, I would take the greatest of all time at something, then arguably the greatest of all time at something.
Well, I mean, is there I guess the only argument really
Wilt
is
Chamberlain.
Wilt.
Yeah, Wilt and
Shaq.
Even Kareem though. Kareem has arguably the most unstoppable move of all time. You could put Shaq's.
I think you could possibly, not through height, but you could possibly hamper. The only thing you could hamper Kareem a little bit more in terms of with physicality. Because in terms of not so much against their relative competition, but against each other as all-time greats, there's areas where you could see, like Wilt, for example, bothering Kareem, and not to say Wilt wouldn't bother Shaq either. The only thing with Wilt is he had the reputation of wanting to be a gentle giant, and he didn't want to force it the way Shaq did. If Wilt played how he played when he did play, then Shaq will be more physical because Shaq's allowed to be more physical, and that's the disadvantage.
Yep.
That's why Shaq, the fact that he could bury his elbow in your chest, he's a foot from the bucket, he dunks it, he gives you the taunting afterwards and just demoralizes you the whole game.
I get Shaq was dominant, but there's many instances where he's been clowned in the block by other players, smaller guys. I mean, my boy Yao Ming, shout out Yao Ming, man, one of my favorite players of all time. Yao Ming clowned him, man. It's like, I get it, like not everyone can be perfect all the time, but with Shaq, I don't know. I just don't have that belief of invincibility surrounding him that lots of people like to put on him. Hence why he's on my 11th. Now, what's really interesting, and this is where no one can agree, is who 10 to 20 is, because that's just so open. We're not going to go there today, but
we can quickly cover some names.
The 10 to 20 is
Oscar. I think Oscar Robertson.
Yeah, you got lots in there.
Jerry.
The question I will ask you though is, where does Giannis rank when all is said and done? 1, out of all the power forwards of all time, and 2, all-time list.
All-time list. Let's not touch it because, again, we didn't include Steph or KD in that list, so I'm not going to put Giannis anywhere near that.
Yeah, no, I don't think Giannis finishes top 10 all time. I'm just saying.
No, I don't see it yet. Unless
I think he's top 20.
If he dominates the next 5 years, then yeah, there's not an argument. He ends up in there. But
where does he end up? So top 5 power forwards of all time. Where does Giannis end up? Because I don't have him in there at the moment. Or if I do, he's number 5. Where do you put Giannis?
This is a tough discussion. So I mean, the one's not tough. It's Duncan. That's not a surprise.
Agree. Who do you have two?
Now, I feel like we've diverged on this because I have a feeling about a certain player, and I know you have a feeling about a certain player, and you like both of them. I personally, because the logic is if I was making a team.
Who's number two? Who's the second greatest point guard, power forward of all time?
I would take Garnett, and that's going to be controversial considering Karl Malone and Dirk.
Yeah.
But if I was making a team, that's the guy I'd want.
Yeah.
Which hurts to say as a Lakers fan.
Yeah, no, I agree. Okay, I actually have Dirk too.
I had Dirk 3.
Yeah, so interchangeable.
Like the thing. So this is going back to what you. So I feel like KG can do more than Dirk can.
KG can do more than Dirk
Dirk's
can.
better at what he does. Like his
offensive game.
Go watch the 2011 finals if you haven't, and the Lakers getting swept by that Dirk team.
Yep.
But
I agree with you.
I think Kevin affects the floor in more ways.
This is the now tricky ones. Is who are 4 and 5?
It's not that tricky.
It is that.
Malone.
See, people put stock into Malone because of the points, but you got to remember he's feeding off one of the greatest passes of all time ever.
And rebounds.
Ever.
But it's still the consistency to do that. Because look,
if you're getting
consistency is
fed,
very hard to find.
If you're getting fed from John Stockton, you're going to put up those numbers. I mean, sure, he's a big body. Sure, he was strong as shit. Sure, I get why Malone is top, but I don't know if I have Malone 4. I don't know if I have Malone 4.
The only hesitation I have here, and I'm going to defer to his own opinion on it, I want to take Charles to an extent, but I'm actually going to go with Mikhail.
Okay.
As 5.
Nice.
Because
I love seeing a
Charles,
Celtic in there.
Well, Charles acknowledged it, like the completeness of his post game. I'm going to avoid cliches, but about being tough nosed and things like that, considering he likes clotheslining people, and that's okay. But again, winner, serial winner.
Yep.
Has the right attitude for it.
And then number 5.
That is number 5.
Oh, so you said 4 was Malone and then 5.
4 was Malone.
Wow.
So yeah, I've got to recap that. That's again undisputably Duncan.
Yep.
KG.
Yep.
Dirk.
Yes.
Malone.
Yes.
And then Mikhail, although I feel bad leaving.
Mikhail is.
I feel bad leaving Barkley off.
Mikhail's like you've just grabbed a bit of magic mushrooms and gone for the weirdest. I mean, I get
again,
Mikhail's
it's consistent with
good, but
it's the same logic
was
I've
he
used
better than
to
Giannis?
separate other things like
is he
magic.
better than Giannis?
Magic.
Man? Damn.
And then again, you've got to look at the body of work. Giannis is still building his.
I would.
So right now, I wouldn't say
I've got Giannis
Mikhail.
at 5 right now.
I wouldn't take it above it right now.
I've got Giannis at 5 right now.
Okay.
Sorry, no, I have Giannis at 4. I've got Malone at 5. But Giannis is at 4 right now. If he gets another ring, he's probably
if
second.
he gets another ring, he obviously overshoots it because there's a difference between being a champion and being
now,
the leader of a champion.
this is where I've had this argument so many times.
In general?
In my opinion, Garnett's peak is better than Duncan's peak. Duncan just did it for longer. Duncan was better for longer. Give me KG, peak MVP KG over any of those power forwards any day. If you have him for one season, I'll take peak KG over any of those guys. But for a body of work, for length of time, give me Duncan.
Now, arguably, the supporting cast was slightly worse, but watch Garnett against the Lakers in 2004.
I've seen it.
And then go back the previous year and watch Duncan with the fumes of David Robinson
I've
and
seen
Ginobili
it.
and Parker not being developed yet against the 3-time defending champion
I've seen
Lakers.
it. I've seen it.
Duncan was on another planet in 2003, and I think there's not really an argument amongst any of those other power forwards.
I think there is. Garnett, what he was able to do with the franchise, because that's the other thing people don't understand is they say, well, it's just basketball, get out there and play. There's so much to that. If your franchise is shitty, if you are staying in crappy hotels and you're not getting the good nights, like, you know, there's franchises that just do it better. Before Cuban took over the Mavericks, they were flying economy, man. They were staying in the crappiest hotels, not getting it. So like there are franchises who just don't do it as good. And surprise, surprise, it ain't the franchises that are always at the top of the league. It's always those crappy Minnesota, Sacramento, those shitty teams. And I'm not saying that's a representation now, but I'm saying there's a reason people want to play for certain teams.
There's an organizational culture, and that's not to overstate it. Because again, people flock to Lakers in our organization.
The Spurs have always been well run.
The only thing to that though is how their free agency has been tough.
I'm not saying that Duncan only had those games because they had a good night sleep. What I'm saying is, if you can go to an organization that is terrible and make something out of nothing, and also be one of the best power forwards in the game, there's something to that. And I think Duncan just had the luxury of being with an insane coach, an insane organization, a great eventual team. I think Duncan had that benefit. I think if you put KG on that team, if you reverse their roles, I think it works out exactly the same. I think he definitely
helps them win a few titles. No, I don't think they win more.
I do.
And I don't think they win an 0-3. Because as good as KG is...
Do they win when Ray Allen hits that shot?
What's he going to do against Shaq? Like, even 0-3 Shaq, what's he going to do?
Well, that's the thing. What could anyone do? Nothing. But it's, again,
Duncan did.
What can he do? What can he do to stop KG? A versatile KG who's going to draw him out to the elbow every single time. Because that's the thing. KG was a better mid-range, deeper shooter, more versatile, more quick. But so Shaq's not good on the perimeter. Shaq ain't good on the perimeter, dude.
The problem was at the time, the logic wasn't to let KG had to fight so much to get to play the way he did. Because at first they wanted to play him as a 3, which obviously was, and by the end of his career, he ended up being a 5.
Yeah, but
and he's primarily power forward. But what I'm meaning is, there's not so much a trust to play like a more open style at the time, which would have KG definitely could have drawn Shaq out. Like, imagine KG is like, again, throwing a fantasy out there, instead of Amari Stoudemire, like those mid-2000 Suns teams having KG as Nash's running partner. Like, that's the perfect fit for a guy like him.
Crazy. But the point I'm trying to make is, I would take KG prime over anyone else, and then I'd take Duncan, and then I'd take Giannis prime. Those would be the top 3 primes. It's just those other guys are too good for too long.
I think I do take Giannis over Dirk, as weird as that is to say, considering his finals MVP performance. But what he offers defensively as well as
Dirk was just such an anomaly. Like, he was such an anomaly for his time. Like a 3-point Luka Doncic, slow, unathletic big man. Like, you look at him.
He had a bit of athleticism
when he was younger. He did not. He hobbled down on the bloody palms of his heels.
I think if you watch 90s and early 2000s Dirk, he's got a bit of movement in him.
No, he does not.
Not by his MVP
His weird coach was making him do all kinds of stupid-ass drills, and even he admitted it, with these weird bloody hippie drills. So, okay, now that's interesting, dude. That's interesting. All right, Timmy, and that is us for another day. Thanks for coming in, dude. Been a pleasure, my friend. Been a pleasure. We'll catch up again soon.
We'll be soon.
Go to Celtics.